From the NFL, Adam Schefter reporting that the Lions are trading running back David Montgomery to the Texans for a 4th-round pick, offensive lineman Juice Scruggs, and a 7th-round pick. Our reaction to the trade. Go ahead, Triggs.
It's another year in his contract. It's a no-brainer for the Houston Texans. You pick up a functional running back for a 5th-round pick. We like the Sonic and Knuckles thing in Detroit, but they're going to move on. They're going to save the money there, go elsewhere.
Yeah, I really like this for Houston. Joe Mixon was so good there his first year and then really hasn't been healthy enough. And so it certainly puts a giant question mark on the future of Joe Mixon, not only in Houston, but really NFL career-wise. So I like the addition of that style of running back in Houston. I have some question marks once again, like I did last offseason. This is the second offensive lineman that they've traded today with an offensive line that was okay last year. So there's two new holes in their offensive line in Houston. For Detroit, it makes a ton of sense. Gibbs has become the main factor. They're going to have to pay him a ton of money. They will find, hopefully, that role player or at least that secondary physical back somewhere in either free agency or the draft.
Stephen A.?
I don't mind the deal. I don't mind the deal at all. I think anytime you can buffer your running game, that takes some of the pressure, presumably off of C.J. Stroud, assuming he's going to be there, which he should. But we all know how bad he was in the playoffs. He's got some making up to do, no doubt about that. So I definitely think this improving their running game helps. Giving up another offensive lineman, I'm kind of wondering about that, particularly considering, you want to be able to protect your quarterback. You want to run block as well, but we'll wait and see with Detroit. I get where you're coming from, Dan, because of Gibbs and what he means to their franchise, etc. But he is just electrifying. But as electrifying as he is, he's relatively small. And I think that having that additional cat to run the football on occasion, I think helps him, helps preserve him to some degree. I think now we can assume he'll have an even heavier load moving forward. I'm wondering how that's going to affect. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands. I'm just talking about health-wise. That's my only reservation. Outside of that, I completely agree with y'all.
The Texans had 34 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 seasons. David Montgomery alone had 33 during that span. That Texans defense, and now they have a solid.
And first thing first, Emery, your thoughts on this trade on both sides, and how do you view this?
Well, I look at it from the Texans side first. First of all, why are they consistently getting rid of offensive linemen? I think they're trying to fill the 7-on-7 team. They're just getting rid of guys up front. We know that protection wasn't the best last season for C.J. Stroud. But in terms of acquiring David Montgomery, I love this for them. We were just on this network the other day talking about maybe Aaron Jones being a good fit for Woody Marks and being his RB2 to complement what he does in the run game. And now you get one of the better ones in the league in David Montgomery, who does a great job in working front side to back side. I love the vision that he has. Shows that he runs with aggressiveness, able to finish runs, still has a lot of juice left in the tank because of what he does in terms of being a true runner. He also helps out in the passing game. He's a good player in pass pro and will help extend Woody Marks throughout the course of the season. So this is a A+ type of move for the Houston Texans regard because of getting a guy that can help you be your code number one. They struggle running the football, and if you can run the football, it not only helps out your quarterback, but most importantly, it helps out your offensive line. So this is an A for the Houston Texans based on who they got, what they needed, and how they went about acquiring them.
So for the Lions on the opposite side, Dan Campbell has said in the past that he wants to get back to their old style of playing football, so they get a 4th and a 7th, and Juice Scruggs, your thoughts and grade on them?
I was a big fan of Juice Scruggs coming out of Penn State. So as an interior offensive lineman, one of my higher graded interior offensive linemen. So I love that for them. They had some issues up front along the offensive line. So Scruggs will help them out in that regard. I give this grade an A for the Detroit Lions because you have a high expensive, high value RB2. And that tells you, hey, we can move off this and come away with an asset for the offensive line while also giving some young guys on our depth chart a little bit more opportunity to have success behind Jahmyr Gibbs. Or we can go into the draft and get a cheaper option at RB2. Right now they have Jacob Sailors, who starred in the UFL, was an All-Pro there. They also have Kai Robichaux, undrafted free agent out of Boston College. And I'm a big fan of what he brought to the table. And they still have Sion Vaki, who can play safety or running back and helps him out on a return game. So they have options back there behind Jahmyr Gibbs, but you get an interior offensive lineman and you're putting more onus on your game breaker, which I've always been a fan of. You don't want to take Jahmyr Gibbs off the field. I know we had the whole Sonic and Knuckles conversation before. Hey, sometimes Sonic is what he is. You got to let Sonic get out there and rock. So this is an A for Detroit. They were able to move off a valuable asset, but acquired an interior offensive lineman And now we'll see what they do with the depth behind Jahmyr Gibbs.
Son is great until those rings to get knocked out. When you talk about the Texans, though, we don't have any rings in Detroit, so maybe we don't even know what that looks like there. That is from producer Telly, not my words, his there. The Texans, when you think about it, we just saw the depth chart there. It's not just David Montgomery. I mentioned Joe Mixon as well. He maybe hinted at maybe there's maybe a new pastor or a chance to go somewhere else where his old days of the Bengals showing his old Cincy gear and things like that. But when you think about bringing in a guy like Montgomery and what they had hoped Mixon would be, is there still room for him there in H-Town?
There is not, because you have two young backs you talked about, and Jordan, who I like, out of Louisville, and Brown out of North Carolina. They want to get those guys some opportunity as well. I'm worried about, Joe Mixon, because when he was out there healthy, when they made that move to go acquire Joe Mixon, he was like, wow, this is exactly what the Houston Texans needed. And when he got hurt, and the words coming back from the organization about when they could expect him back, it wasn't good. So you worried about whether or not he was going to ever play again. And so them going out acquiring David Montgomery pretty much tells you that they're going to move past and moved on from Joe Mixon. So it's tough to see, because when he was healthy, especially when he was in Cincinnati, he was one of the top 5 backs in the game. He had that Tigger-like springiness in his agility to go from A gap to C gap, back to C gap on the other side. So we may not get that version of Joe Mixon that you saw right there on the graphic. He's going to be in year 10, and we know what that means for running backs, and we just hope that he can get out there healthy in some facet and find a way to close out his career the right way.
I want to go down and a little tick down in that depth chart there. You look at Woody Marks, and if we're thinking about the fantasy angle here, where guys are going to be looking for that RB3 or RB4 here, obviously, once we get to those fantasy drafts down the line, Emery, your thoughts on what Woody can bring and his impact there now with David Montgomery in the backfield?
Well, you have to factor in Montgomery might be the leadoff guy. So that may bump down Marks a little bit to where he can sustain his level of play over the course of a season. So in terms of fantasy, you're probably looking more as an RB3 or RB4 or a flex play, because now he won't be asked to be the sustained starter. And we saw him start to wear down at times over the course of the season, and now you can kind of save himself from himself by acquiring a guy like David Montgomery, who can kind of spell him. And Montgomery's going to warrant at least 15 to 20 touches a game. That's less for Marks, but you probably will get a more efficient Marks in that regard on the back end.
I want to go back to Jahmyr Gibbs for a second, because we mentioned that dynamic there with having Montgomery, maybe that safety net, that chance to go out for a couple plays and still know you're getting that RB1 type of competition out there. Is this a chance for him to maybe really be that number 1 back in terms of that feature back, which we don't see too often nowadays, or is there a chance or room for them to add somebody else?
They're gonna always add somebody else just to kind of keep that rotation going. But man, I love this for Jahmyr Gibbs, because you talk about getting those rings knocked out. You can't hit what you can't catch. You can't hurt what you can't touch. They got to catch him first in order to knock those rings out. And he has that explosive speed to ring that cash register up pretty quickly. And for him, this move to me puts him right in the crosshairs of potentially getting that 2,000-yard season, because he has the type of vision, he has the type of explosiveness, and now based on today, he's going to get that opportunity to really tote the rock and really crush some rushing numbers out there in Detroit.
Before I let you go, I need you to give me those grades one more time. There's a student in the back named Brian Telly. He wasn't listening. He was doing other things, so he needs those grades for the Texans on this trade and also the Lions one more time if you can.
See, I would be the best teacher, because I want you guys out my classroom, so I'm going to give everybody A's. So I gave both the Lions and the Texans A's for their trade because of what they were able to do, how they were able to go about it, and what this means for the football team. Now, I still am worried about the Texans keep running all their offensive linemen out the way, but I love the fact that they went out and got David Montgomery. And for the Detroit Lions, this is now showing a tip of the cap to Jahmyr Gibbs, but also doing a great job in saying, hey, we're going to use this interior offensive line help to help us spearhead this run game. That's what he talked about when he said we're going to get back to what we're used to. They want to run the football, wear down defenses. This is a move that kind of exemplifies that by getting Juice Scruggs in addition to helping out a Jahmyr Gibbs.
Thank goodness you are not teaching any of our kids, because, boy, that'd be easy, but it won't.